Editorial notes. Let's do that one. So the editorial notes is going to be fun. We're going to add notes to blocks. So if you were editor and you know what, I'm going to get this running behind the scenes before I start rambling. So go back into plugins. Gonna run that. We should get an editorial notes thing running in here. There we go. Okay, so anyway, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna basically we're gonna add something to every block so you can use as an editor or a reviewer of someone's post content can go in and say, oh, I don't like this sentence, change this image, all that sort of stuff. It's a very rudimentary commenting system, but it shows how to like extend blocks and do some fun stuff. So let's see how we doing. So, okay, so all right, so that's ready to go. Oops. We're gonna CD into editorial notes. I'm gonna come over here to my plugins, make sure the editorial notes is activated. We're gonna go back here and I'm gonna create a new post called editorial notes. Save that. All right, so we've done the setup, very cool. We're gonna go configure the build process. So we're not building any blocks, so we just want to tell the scripts package where to find the files that we want to use. So we're gonna take this and we're gonna update the package JSON file for editorial notes. I'm gonna come in here. Oh, that's interesting. Interesting, okay. So I'm gonna delete this start, I'm gonna delete this build. I think I need to make some changes to that because the stuff that we were just seeing there was the new manifest stuff that gets added automatically, and we don't necessarily need it here. So what we're doing here in the build process is we're just telling the scripts package just load source notes field. So source notes field. That's all we want. That's all we care about, right? So with that build process running, with that in place, we can just run npm run start. It should find the notes and build it out. And if we look in build, we should see we have notes field in there. So the next thing is we're going to queue the assets. So we're now building files. So we're just going to add this to the main PHP plugin. Right? There's nothing in here right now, so I'm just going to add that. This is very straightforward stuff. If you include JavaScript in WordPress, we're doing this on the block editor assets, include block editor assets, so it's only loaded inside the block editor, and we're just looking. This is something that I like to do. I think I've seen this a lot more recently, but checking to make sure that the file exists before we include the associated JavaScript. But anyways, so we're just basically going to go and say, we're going to look in the build directory for notes fields. We're going to queue that. We're going to get the version and the dependencies from our assets file, which is right here. So we're going to see the dependencies that it needs and the version number and all that stuff. So we're doing this in 2 steps. So queue block assets. And we're going to do the same sort of thing. We're going to make sure that the notes field is there. And if it's there, we're going to pull in the CSS from it. And we're just matching our versions, because if we do a build, the version will change here. And then if we lock our JavaScript and our CSS to the same version, then there'll be no issues with caching and stuff like that. So I'm going to space that out a little bit more. But yeah, so all this is doing is adding the CSS and the JavaScript for what we're about to do. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to add a custom attribute to every single block. So what we want to do is we're going to add a function to our notes field JavaScript. All it's going to, and I'll take us through it in the code part. So if we go into notes field, not in there, in here, you can see there's nothing going on in here right now. So the first thing we're going to do is add this function. And what this function is going to do is when it's associated with a filter, it's going to basically check, it's going to add a new attribute to the existing attributes. I'm going to put the second part of the code in so it looks a bit easier to read. So we're going to add a filter. The filter is going to be blocks.register block type. So this is the existing filter that is there. This is the sort of the namespace for our filter. And then this is the function that it needs to run on that filter. So this filter will pass the settings. So the setting for each block and the name of the block. We're not using names here, but if you wanted to be like if name is not equal to core paragraph, or if name is not equal to your custom block. Or if you just want to do this, if you just want to have an opt-in approach, if name is like my custom block, custom with a P, then you could do some stuff in there. So this would be how you would only add this to certain blocks. But we're doing it to all of them, so I'm just going to leave it as is. So all this is doing is going to add another attribute to every block called notes, which is a type of string, and it has a default value of an empty string. That's it. So now this is all in place. However, there's, if we were to come into here, I'm sorry, let me save draft for whatever reason, and we start typing in here, like it's been registered, but there's nothing really associated with it yet. So we need to create the UI to allow us to insert notes, comments, whatever, corrections. So we're gonna add a control. So we're gonna do this with another hook, and I'm just gonna put it at the bottom of the notes field.js. So what we're doing is we're registering. Why is that yelling at me? Oh, get lost. Yeah, get out of here. So we're adding another filter, so it's the editor.blockEdit. So this receives the block edit component for each block, and then allows you to do things with it. And so what we're doing now is it's kind of funny because it receives the block edit, and it's going to return. It gets a function that receives the props of this block edit, and then we can return the block edit component again with its props. So this is, if we were to just do this, nothing would change. This would just filter it and return the block edit as is. So it's kind of pointless right now. But what we want to do is we're going to want to add some more stuff to it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get some of our properties out of here. So where did I do that? Inside of the in here. So we're destructuring out the notes and the set attributes and from props, which is passed here. And then the second part of that is we're going to get the inspector controls, which we've already imported up top here. There's a bunch of stuff that we're not using. And we're going to just drop it underneath the existing block edit. And so what this will do, talking about notes is already defined. Fine. It's just yelling at me because it's already defined. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. So what this is going to do is this is going to take the existing block edit, so all of the controls and all of the stuff on the sidebar, like over here, all of this stuff, and then it's going to add our stuff underneath it, right? And it's going to add, and it's going to use slot fill. So like inspector controls is like the slot that appears in the block edit area, and it's going to, and we're going to wrap a text area control inside of a panel body, and this is going to be where our notes go. So if I were to refresh this now, let me just save this, make sure it's saved. And I click on this, so you see now we've got editorial notes over here, and by default it goes in here. So now if we start adding notes in here, you can see we have some editorial notes, which is great. But if you were to have, say, I don't know, 20 blocks or 100 blocks, and how would you know just by looking at it that there's something that has a note on it, right? Like if we plunk an image in here, for example, and we choose this image, I'm going to be using this image all the time, right? And so on the block, we've got some editorial notes. Change this image, right? So we save this, but there's no way of knowing. So the next part of this is we're going to add the CSS that kind of gives us an indication that there is something going on in here that needs the author's attention, right? Oh, the other thing that I wanted to just show is that if you actually reverse the order here, it should render it in opposite order. So if we grab this, it won't matter because there's nothing on that side. But if we grab this, you can see, oh look, my editorial notes now appear above the settings that come with it. Just something to keep in mind. So we're going to add some code to make this run a little faster. We only need a new control when the block is selected. So let's only display it when, okay, cool. So we're going to do just some performance optimizations here. We don't need to display any of this stuff unless it's selected. This feels a bit redundant now. But what you can do is you get is selected out of the props. I don't actually know if this is going to matter. I'm starting to think this maybe won't matter, but this is a really, yeah. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna check to see if it is selected, then we're gonna render this. I don't think it's being rendered if it's not selected anyways, but this is a nice little pattern to do that. Okay, so now we need to display when the block has notes. So the first thing now that we need is we're gonna add a custom class to the block to have it get rendered, like so we can then hook onto that class with some CSS. So this is what we're doing. So we're adding block list block. So this is like the how can I explain this? So the block list block is like the wrapper that contains the block edit component and all the toolbars. So it's sort of like every block gets wrapped in this thing. And so we want to add a class to it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, if there is a notes.length for this particular block, so we're getting the notes from the attributes of this particular block, we're going to check for length. Basically, if it's a string of more than one character, of more than 0 characters, then it's going to have, it has notes class associated with it, and then the CSS that we've already enqueued is going to pick it up and display it as having notes. So you can see, I think I did some horrible, yeah. So you can see this is an amazing way of doing this, but you would obviously want to do something that looks a little nicer. Cool, editorial notes. That one is in the books.